I need you to stop what you're doing and learn this, because today I'm talking about an insanely useful marriage communication skill that has helped my marriage. And as a couples counselor, it has helped me with couples who are struggling to go or get deeper in their relationship, and it's helped them as well as helped me. And it's a simple but extremely useful tip that the very best of therapists, the very best of counselors are using to help their clients to go from a place of unclear, no clarity, ambiguity, ambivalence, and things like that to a place of getting clarity and closeness in the relationship. You see, when I learned this skill for myself, I use it in my marriage. I started using it in my relationship with my wife and the communication. I can tell you the results improved. The results strengthened us and brought us together. And I want to share it with you today. My name is Frank DeGrassi. I'm a couples counselor, and if you've been enjoying the videos, would you please like, subscribe, and share this to other friends and family members? This helps get this message out there. I try to break down simple concepts when it comes to couples counseling, when it comes to couples and relationships, because if I can help the couple, I can help the family, and if I can help the family, I can help the community. So let's get right into it. What is that very simple strategy that can help couples get closer? It's an acronym that has been created by motivational interviewing, for those of you who are into therapy and all the counseling stuff, a spirit of conversation called motivational interviewing. And they use this simple acronym called OARS, OARS. Kind of similar to like when ORAS, it's like when you think of a rowboat, they have those oars, right? That, or like those paddles called oars that kind of paddles the canoe, paddles the boat, oars. And we need these oars to help paddle in the relationship of communication. The communication of a relationship, rather, because it helps us to flow together, flow and move together. Because if there's only one oar, if there's only one paddle that's paddling, we're just going to go in circles. But if there's both paddles going together, the communication canoe is going to go at the same pace, same direction. There's not going to be a lot of jerking around and going to be just uneasiness and things, but we're going to be flowing and moving together. So what is that? OARS. The first thing we need to recognize in the whole thing about the skill of communication is called open-ended questions. OARS, open-ended questions. This invites her to tell her story. This invites your wife, your girlfriend, your partner, your spouse to tell their story, to share, right? I had a friend, and he would tell me, we'll talk in Hawaii. We call conversations talk stories, and we would talk, and he would share kind of things, and he would ask me this question that really would just cause me to open up more. And he would say something like, he'd say, "Frank, so what are your thoughts about that?" And I thought that was a really good question, because we all have thoughts about something. At least we should have some thoughts about it, some opinions, either in the positive or the negative. We should have opinions about it. So he would invite me into the conversation by saying something like, "What are your thoughts about that?" And so open-ended questions are questions that allows conversation to keep on going. And so think of it like a tennis match. One partner hits the ball over the net, and the other partner returns and hits the ball over the net. It's just back and forth. It's a conversation. It's a dialogue. It's not one-sided. And so saying that, in fact, maybe write that down, right? What are your thoughts about this? Or can you help me understand? Or here's another one to write down. What do you want to do next? Right? It's having this conversation that are open-ended. Now, close-ended questions end with yes or no. Yes or no. We don't want that, because once they ask a question that is closed questions, yes or no, and then it's done. Right? We don't want that. We want to open up questions. So questions that start with what, um, when, where, or why, or how. Like how can I help you with? Yes, it's just how can you do that better, or what were your thoughts about that, right? So those kinds of questions help open the conversation and invites her to tell her story. What are your thoughts of that? What are your opinions about? What do you think about that? Right? So open-ended question. The next one is A, which is affirmations. Affirmations, what it does, it highlights what the person was saying. It highlights their positive, even if small. We're not looking for huge things. We're looking for small things, highlighting things and saying, man, I really appreciate you doing that. Or sounds like you handled that very well. Or saying something like, that's a really good suggestion. Or something like, I really love what you did there. Right? Really highlighting it, praising the small things. I had a friend who would just say she was really good at that. She was really good at that. In fact, when I would talk stories with her, she would say something like, "Wow, Frank, you're really good at that." And it made me feel good. It genuinely made me feel good. And that's the thing about it. Affirmations need to be genuine. You can't be just making stuff up. I had another friend who would say things that was like kind of disingenuous in saying things. I know you're really good at this, and that. I'm thinking, how do you know that? I've never done that before. What are you talking about? Right? So it just it makes it disingenuous if you're not paying attention. So that's where you really need to pay attention and affirm, like, wow, affirm what they're saying something to the effect when you're talking with your wife. I know, like for me, my wife, she would share about her thoughts about a friend. And I would say something like, when she was sharing with me about, she's very concerned about a friend. She's really thinking about this friend of hers that's going through a tough time. And I would say something, babe, I love the way you have this concern for others. You just really care about them. Right. Like, I would say something also like, babe, man, I really love the way you care for others. That's amazing. And that's a genuine affirmation, right? Open-ended questions, affirmations. The next one is reflective listening. Reflective listening. And that is paraphrasing or stating the meaning of what your wife had just shared. I think of it like the Japanese culture. Whenever I watch Japanese people converse, even though I have no clue what they're saying, I don't speak Japanese, just skoshi, a little bit. Anyways, whenever they would go back and forth, they would do these kinds of ways to help the speaker understand, realize, or know that the listener is with them. They would say like, so, I, right. Those kinds of those kinds of things that will go back and forth. So reflective listening is like that. Reflective listening helps your wife feel that, yes, that's exactly right. It's like these quick summarization, these quick um, phrases, paraphrases of the speaker. So you're going to say statements like, wait, so like my wife, let me just give you an example. My wife would share, let me go back to that example of how she would be sharing about her friend. And so she'd be sharing her friend and how she's very concerned and how she's wondering, concerned about her because she hasn't heard from her and all those kind of things. And so I would say something like, wow, sounds like you really care about what's going on there. She's like, and she would say, yeah, exactly, because of A, B, and C, and so on and so forth, right? Or she would say something like, huh, there's a lot going on at school today. She's a teacher at an elementary school. So she would say something like, man, there's a lot going on at school today. And this is happening and that happening. And man, I'm just kind of stuck with all of this. I'm just kind of just running my wheels and it's really hard. And so I would respond with a reflective listening statement like, wow, babe, so you kind of sounds like a lot going on and you just thrown in different directions and you're just kind of figuring out what is priority. Does that sound about right? And she'd be like, yeah, exactly. I just so much going on and I just got so much to do. You see how it kind of it again, that whole oars thing, right? We're flowing together like the tennis match. You're just going back and forth, right? By reflective listening, you are sharing some things, some of your thoughts about what she's probably going through and just kind of paraphrasing what she's saying. So, statements like, write this down. Statements like, so you feel a little bit irritated. You feel, sounds like you feel pretty excited about it, or so you feel kind of concerned. So the statement is, so you feel, or you're wondering if, or it sounds like you are. So those are statements that you could use in reflective listening to help your wife feel, yes, exactly, that's what I'm going through. It's kind of like putting a mirror to her face and saying, yeah, that's exactly what I'm going through. It shows that you're listening. Open-ended questions, affirmations, reflective listening, and the last one is summarizing. Summarizing. Really, summarizing is summarizing everything she just said. I had a supervisor who was great at that. We would talk. She would supervise me for like 30 minutes, and I knew she was taking notes. However, she would get everything that we talked about and summarize it. And the statement she would use would be, so today what we've talked about is A, B, C, D. And she would kind of, and maybe she'd throw in some of the fine details, but she would get the big topics that we're talking about. And so that helped me, to know like she was tracking with me when she'd summarize the whole thing. In the same way, when you listen to your wife, summarize what you heard. So the statement, the prompts you could say is like, so let me see if I understand you so far, and then continue and just summarizing. Another statement you could say is, so what I heard you say is, and then summarize it. Or say something like, so this, babe, this is what I've heard. Tell me if I'm missing anything, and then summarizing it. Those are powerful statements. Choose one of those. The one I typically say is, so what you're saying is, right? I would say that a lot. Whenever I'm with clients in therapy, I would say something like, so what I've heard so far is, and then tell me if I got anything of these pieces wrong is, and I would summarize it. This helps your wife recognize, he's listening, he's paying attention. The bottom line in all of this is to keep the conversation going. I said conversation going. I didn't say get into a conflict and get going, right? Keep the conversation going. Conversation requires you to have emotion, but from a de escalated standpoint where you can go back and forth and have this closeness. Conflict should lead to closeness, because when you have conflict, the couple, as a couple, we need to have to come to a point where there's conflict, and we can still apply the open-ended question, affirmation, reflective listening, summarizing in that conversation, that conflict conversation. We can have a conflict that's escalated and we just get nowhere. In conflicts, typically is rowing with one paddle, isn't it? So we just go in circles and circles and circles, and we don't go anywhere. But when we're able to have a de-escalated conflict communication using the oars technique, we're rowing with two paddles and we're going in the same direction. We may not right now come to a conclusion or a resolve, but at least we're able to come to a repair in the relationship and row together and draw closer. You will know the health of a relationship that when they're in conflict, they draw closer. They get closer. They listen to each other more. They use the open ended questions, affirmations, reflective statements, and summarizing to help them get closer and to get through the conflict versus get stuck and go in circles. I want to keep this conversation going. And if you could follow me to the next video, I want to talk, actually, it's right over here. Follow me to the next video, and we're going to talk about how we can listen heart to heart and just get closer in our conversation versus not listening heart to heart. That will cause a chasm and a gap between the couple. All right. Follow me over there, and I'll see you then. Take care.